So in this video, we'll discuss how to get information from tensor, information like what is the shape of the tensor, what is the number of dimensions, and what is the rank of the tensor, etc. Right? Okay, so let's say we have this tensor T1. T1 is equal to Tf dot constant. We are creating the tensor constant. Let's say we will have a three-dimension tensor, right? So this is when we have two brackets, two square brackets, it's a 2D, right? Um, and when I have three square brackets, it's a 3D tensor, right? So now inside, let's create this tensor one by one. I mean, now inside this is a 2D, right? Inside 2D, how many elements we will have? Let's say I want to have two uh, elements, right? So, and inside 3D, how many elements I want to have? Inside, let's say this 3D, I want to have two elements which are themselves two dimensionals. So yeah, so this is the let's say 3D tensor. Of course, I have not put values here. So let's say 1, comma 2, comma 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the first 2D element of this tensor, right? So this one is the first 2D element of the three-dimensional tensor, right? Let's create the second two-dimensional element. 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, right? So we have a 3D tensor. This is these outside brackets for 3D, and this 3D tensor contains two-dimensional element. This is first two-dimensional element, and this is second two-dimensional element, right? Okay. Now each of these two-dimensional elements themselves contain a one-dimensional element, right? Like this. If you see here, this one, this is the first. This is a first 2D element. This is the second 2D element. So this 2D element or 2D matrix, which is element of 3D matrix, this 2D matrix contains one-dimensional matrix as matrices as element. So here this bracket is not required, this comma is not required. Okay, so this is the first one-dimensional one-dimensional element of this two-dimensional element, and this is second one-dimensional element of this two-dimensional matrix. Okay, similarly, this 2D elements, 2D matrix again contains two one-dimensional elements, this one and this one. Okay, so now let's see how to get information from this, right? So let's execute this code. Let's print, or tf.constant is a function, by the way. Tf.constant is a function. To this function, we need to function or method. To this method, we need to pass the tensor. So let's say t to t1. If we print, we get this matrix, this 3D tensor, right? You see, this is the this outer, this one, this is the bracket of three-dimension tensor. This three-dimensional tensor contains two-dimensional tensors. This is the first two-dimensional tensor. This is the second two-dimensional tensor as element. This is called as zeroth element of the three-dimensional element. This is called as first element of two-dimensional. This is zeroth element. This first element, 2D element, is zeroth. The second 2D element is called as first. Inside this zeroth, right? So if I inside this zeroth element, this is the zeroth element, zeroth 1D element, and this is the first 1D element. This one is the first element, 1D element. Inside this first two-dimensional element, this is the zeroth one-dimensional element, and this is the first one-dimensional element, right? Now inside this zeroth one-dimensional element, this is zeroth element, this is first element, this is second element, right? So that is how, if I want to reach to this element, I'll say T1 of 1 inside one. This one talks about the third dimension, right? Third dimension. And in third dimension, where you want to reach? In the zeroth, right? 0. Inside 0, we want to reach to 1. So this will give me access to this element. Okay, so let's now get the information. What are the number of dimensions? By the way, the shape of this tensor is 2, 2, 3. So this 2 says how many elements are there in the three-dimensional matrix, three-dimensional element, three-dimensional tensor, sorry. So this three-dimensional element has 2 elements. This three-dimensional matrix has 2 elements. What are those? This is the first element, this one, and this is the second element. That's why the shape of this three-dimensional matrix is 2. This 2 talks about how many elements are there in the three-dimensional matrix. Now this 2 talks about how many elements are there in the two-dimensional. This three-dimensional matrix contains two-dimensional matrix element. This is the first two-dimensional matrix. This is the second two-dimensional matrix, right? Inside this two-dimensional matrix, how many elements are there, right? So let's see how many elements are there. So this 2 talks about how many elements are there inside this, right? So inside this is the first element, which is 1D matrix or 1D array. So this is the second element. So there are 2 elements inside the 2D matrix. This 2 talks about this, right? Now what about this 3? What this 3 talks about, right? How many elements are there inside the one-dimensional array, this one-dimensional array? So there are 3 elements, first, second, third. So these 3 elements are there inside this one-dimensional array. So this shape is sometimes also, these are also called as axis. This is axis 0, axis 1, axis 2, right? Axis 0 contains 2 elements, axis 1 contains 2 elements, axis 2 contains 3 elements, right? So let's try to get information by using commands, TensorFlow commands, right? So let's say I want to get number of dimensions, right? So T1, I'll simply say T1 dot end. I'll get the number of dimensions here. 3, there are 3 dimensions. So let's say T1 dot shape. So it will give me the shape of the matrix. We already got the shape. Now let's say T1 dot data type. T1 dot D type. So the by default data type is int 32, right? Now let's say I want to get the size. The size means how many total elements are there inside that tensor, total number of elements, right? So tf dot size. To the size I'll pass T1, right? T1. So in total there are 12 elements, right? In total there are 12 elements, right? Now this tensor, now from this tensor, so I can get the information like how many total elements are there in the first element of this 3D matrix. Like that means how many elements are there in the first 2D matrix, right? I can get the information about this. I can get the information about this, etc. Right? So let's see that all in the next video.